My name is Lila Bennett. I'm 33, and I've always believed that love and sacrifice could fill the gaps life leaves behind. But sometimes, no amount of devotion can protect you from being overlooked. I met Ethan, my boyfriend, 5 years ago. He was charming, patient, and immediately swept me off my feet. But part of his life was complicated. His ex-girlfriend, Rachel, lingered in the background more than either of us would have liked. Despite that, I trusted him. The first time I really understood how much commitment meant to me was when I met Ethan's daughter, Mia. She was 8 years old then, bright-eyed and mischievous, with a laugh that could pierce the dullest day. I had never thought I'd care for a child not my own, but Mia's presence changed me. Her biological father, Ethan's ex, Rachel, was unreliable. She appeared in bursts, full of promises she rarely kept. "Next weekend we'll bake cookies," she'd say, or "I'll come to your recital." And then she would vanish, leaving disappointment in her wake. Mia's eyes would glisten with hope, only to dim hours later. I silently vowed to never be that kind of presence in her life. Over the years, I became her anchor. I was the one who held her hand while learning to ride a bike, wiped tears after scraped knees, and stayed up through fevers in the middle of the night. Every school recital, every soccer game, every small milestone, I was there. Mia called me Mom once jokingly, and I felt a warmth I hadn't expected. Ethan noticed. He smiled often, watching the bond between us grow. But I didn't need recognition from him. I was content in the quiet certainty that I had chosen to love her, and she had chosen to love me back. Yet nothing could prepare me for what came next. When Mia announced she was getting married to Andrew, I was genuinely thrilled. I imagined standing beside her, witnessing the girl I had raised walk into her future. I even offered to help with the wedding costs, covering parts of the dress, the reception, the little extras that made the day magical. I never expected thanks, just acknowledgement. Then the invitation arrived. My heart froze. My name wasn't in any special spot. Worse, Mia had chosen Rachel, her biological mother, to walk her down the aisle. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I asked Mia directly, hoping for some explanation that would make sense. Her answer was simple, almost casual. "There's only one biological mother, Lila. I've always wanted her to have this moment." It felt like a punch straight to my chest. Years of care, love, and presence erased with a single sentence. And the way she said it, as if she hadn't even considered me, stung the most. On her wedding day, I arrived early, wearing a suit I had tailored with quiet pride. I sat among the guests, invisible, watching Rachel lead Mia down the aisle. I had been a constant in her life, yet in that moment, I didn't exist. After the ceremony, Mia and Andrew whisked off for a luxurious honeymoon. I didn't ask where. They were finally living their dream, but I braced myself for the inevitable, a request. And it came. "Lila," Mia said over the phone, casual as ever, "we ran into some unexpected expenses. Could you help cover the cost?" My throat went dry. Every instinct told me to say yes. I had always been the one to fix things, to step in, to provide. But this time, something inside me refused. "I'm sorry, Mia," I said, my voice steady, though my heart pounded. "I can't help you this time." There was silence, then disbelief. "But you've always helped before." I took a slow breath. "Maybe you should ask Rachel. She's your biological mother, isn't she?" And with that, the call ended. No argument, no tears, just emptiness. That day marked the beginning of a change in me, one I hadn't anticipated. I realized I had been treated as replaceable, and for the first time, I refused to accept it. I returned home to Ethan, who confronted me. His voice trembled, half anger, half confusion. "You can't just abandon her, Lila," he said. "It's not about abandoning her," I replied quietly. "It's about respect. I've spent years being her support, and when I had a chance to be acknowledged, I was ignored. I can't keep being the fallback plan." Our conversation ended in tense silence. The house felt colder, emptier. I felt the shift deep inside, a protective wall forming around my heart. For the first time in years, I questioned what it truly meant to give without limit, and whether it was worth it when love and effort were dismissed. Weeks passed after Mia's wedding, and the silence between Ethan and me grew heavier. I focused on myself for the first time in years, woodworking, long walks, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected. Yet the drama refused to let me fully breathe. One evening, Ethan told me Mia and Andrew were struggling financially. Rent unpaid, bills piling up. His words carried a subtle expectation, an unspoken plea for me to step in. I looked at him, calm but firm. "I'm not her fallback anymore," I said. "If she wants help, she can ask Rachel." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Lila, you can't just leave her to struggle." I shook my head. "I didn't leave her. She chose someone else to walk her down the aisle. I'm not her plan B anymore." He stared at me, disbelief in his eyes. I could see the conflict within him, the love for Mia battling the realization that our relationship had changed forever. But I stood my ground. I had to. The next week, a message appeared on my phone. Andrew, brief and heavy with desperation. "Lila, can we talk? It's urgent." I hesitated, knowing exactly what he wanted. Money. Always money. But curiosity and a lingering sense of responsibility, not as her stepmother, but as someone who truly cared, won over caution. We met at a small cafe. Andrew sat nervously, tapping his fingers on the table, avoiding eye contact. I sipped my coffee, letting him speak first. "We're behind on rent," he admitted finally. "If we don't pay in 2 weeks, we'll be evicted. I thought maybe you could help." I held his gaze. "Have you asked Rachel?" Andrew blinked, confused. "Rachel? No. We didn't want to bother her. We thought you thought I would fix it," I finished. "Just like always. But Mia chose her mother for the wedding, didn't she? Maybe it's time Rachel steps up." He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "This conversation is over. I wish you both the best, but I cannot solve your problems this time." I stood, leaving him with an untouched coffee and a brewing frustration I felt no sympathy for. Returning home, Ethan was waiting. His eyes, weary and conflicted, questioned me without words. I said nothing. He could see for himself that I had remained steadfast. That night, the house was quiet, but the tension lingered like a low fog. Something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt obligated to pour myself into others' lives at the expense of my own well-being. Amid this turmoil, one light appeared unexpectedly. Sophie, Ethan's longtime friend. She had always been around, fun, supportive, and endlessly observant. After the wedding, she reached out more often. At first, I assumed it was casual concern, but soon our conversations deepened. She understood the heartbreak I couldn't articulate, the invisible toll of being overlooked. One late evening, after hours of talking and laughing over memories and frustrations, Sophie reached across the table and said, softly but firmly, "You deserve happiness, Lila. Don't let anyone take it from you." Her words struck a chord deep within me. Months of pain, sacrifice, and invisibility had accumulated, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. Our hands lingered together a moment too long, our eyes locking. Before I knew it, I was leaning in, and she met me halfway. A kiss that carried months of longing, frustration, and unspoken needs. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed with Sophie, talking, laughing, and letting the raw emotions of the past years finally surface. She didn't judge, didn't ask me to justify my choices. She simply understood. I knew the path we were on was complicated, even wrong in the eyes of others. But for the first time in years, I felt alive and seen. Yet, in the back of my mind, a small voice reminded me, this couldn't last forever. Ethan would notice, the walls at home would start cracking, and eventually, the consequences of our connection would demand reckoning. For now, though, I allowed myself this fragile taste of freedom. Months passed, and the quiet tension in our home grew heavier. Ethan and I lived under the same roof, but the warmth and intimacy we once shared had evaporated. Nights were spent in silence, side by side, but emotionally miles apart. He blamed me silently for not rescuing Mia and Andrew, for refusing to do the right thing, while I wrestled with a different kind of anger, the anger of being taken for granted for years. Meanwhile, Mia's life was unraveling. Her marriage with Andrew was crumbling under the weight of financial strain. Their eviction had forced them into Andrew's mother's cramped apartment. She called occasionally, her tone apologetic but insistent, hinting at the help she expected. I ignored most calls, letting my silence send the message I couldn't say aloud. I will not be your backup plan anymore. One rainy afternoon, Ethan returned home, his face pale. "Lila, Mia's situation just got worse," he said, barely containing his frustration. "They're in real trouble. The landlord is threatening to sue. Maybe we should help." I cut him off. "No, Ethan, this is not my responsibility. Mia chose her father for the wedding. Let her deal with him now." He stared at me, disbelief flashing across his eyes. Lila, you're being cruel. I'm being fair, I replied evenly. I've spent decades being the one who fixes everything. I will not do it again for someone who dismissed me when it mattered. Our conversation ended in icy silence. The distance between us had transformed from a quiet sadness into a tangible wall. Amid the turmoil, Sophie became my anchor. We spent long evenings together, talking, laughing, sometimes sitting in companionable silence. Her presence reminded me what it felt like to be truly understood, truly seen. One night, as we watched the sunset from my balcony, Sophie gently took my hand. You've carried too much, Lila, she whispered. It's okay to put yourself first. You deserve peace. Her words echoed the feelings I had tried to suppress for years. I leaned into her comfort, the unspoken bond between us growing stronger. Our connection deepened in ways that scared and thrilled me simultaneously. Then the unexpected happened. A message from Mia appeared on my phone. Short, hesitant, almost pleading. Lila, can we meet? I need to talk. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the past remain undisturbed. But curiosity, the desire for closure, and a lingering affection overpowered my hesitation. We met at a small park we used to visit when she was little. Mia sat on a familiar bench, fidgeting nervously with her hands. I approached, and she stood, offering a tentative hug. It felt fragile, almost artificial, but I accepted it out of politeness. For several minutes, we sat in silence. Then Mia began talking, not about her financial struggles, but about her frustration and fear of living with Andrew's mother, about how lonely and confined she felt. I listened quietly, sensing her vulnerability, yet keeping my emotions in check. Finally, she took a deep breath. Lila, I know I hurt you. The wedding, everything. I didn't realize how much until it was too late. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I nodded slowly, letting her words settle. Mia, you didn't just hurt me at the wedding. Every time you chose your father over me, every time you ignored the sacrifices I made, you diminished what I gave. This isn't just about that day, it's about everything. Her eyes dropped, shaken. She had likely expected me to forgive her instantly, to slip back into my old role. But some fractures run too deep to repair with words alone. We parted that day with no promises of immediate reconciliation. Mia's apology had opened a door, but I wasn't ready to walk through it. Not yet. That evening, Sophie waited for me at my apartment. I told her everything, my anger, my grief, my conflicted feelings about Mia's apology. She listened without judgment, her presence grounding me. You did what you needed to do, she said finally. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. For the first time in years, I felt the weight on my shoulders lift, even if just a little. Sophie wasn't just a friend. She was a mirror reflecting the strength I had forgotten I possessed. Yet the calm was deceptive. The consequences of Mia's choices, the tension with Ethan, and the secret between Sophie and me hinted that the storm was far from over. The following weeks brought a strange rhythm to my life. Quiet, tense, and loaded with unspoken truths. Ethan grew more restless, his sharp glances and loaded silences making the house feel smaller than it was. I could feel him watching me, suspecting something, but not daring to confront it outright. Every time I returned from meeting Sophie, I caught him lingering in the doorway or pausing mid-conversation, trying to read me like an open book. Meanwhile, Mia's troubles escalated. A text arrived one morning, desperate and fragmented. Lila, Andrew's job fell through. The rent's overdue again. We're behind on everything. I don't know what to do. Please. I read it and felt the familiar pull. The instinct to fix, to rescue, to sacrifice. But this time I resisted. I stared at the screen, letting the words linger, letting her helplessness sit alongside my long-standing resentment. I typed back carefully. Mia, you need to ask the person you chose for these moments. I'm not responsible for problems you ignored before. She didn't reply immediately. I imagined her anger, disbelief, and hurt all mixing together. Part of me wondered if she even understood what she had lost when she chose Mark over me. Not just my help, but my devotion, my unwavering presence for decades. Ethan confronted me that evening. His voice was sharp, bordering on accusation. Lila, you can't just let her fail. She's your daughter. I met his gaze evenly, refusing to flinch. Ethan, she's your daughter too, by blood. And look at him. Mark? Has he ever been here when it mattered? No. I've been her constant, and she dismissed it. She chose her father for her milestones. Let him take responsibility for her struggles now. He shook his head, furious and disbelieving. You're cold. I can't believe how heartless you've become. I'm not heartless. I'm self-respecting, I replied firmly. You may not like it, but I won't be used as a crutch anymore. Not for Mia, not for anyone. The conversation ended abruptly. Ethan retreated to his study, slamming the door behind him. I exhaled slowly, feeling both liberated and alone. It was during this turbulent period that Sophie's presence became my sanctuary. She understood me in ways Ethan never could. One night, after another long, quiet conversation about my frustration, resentment, and sense of betrayal, she leaned close, her hand brushing mine. Lila, you deserve happiness. You've given everything and received nothing. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Her eyes held a warmth I hadn't felt in years, and before I realized it, I was leaning into her, our lips meeting in a hesitant, electric kiss. It was a collision of longing, relief, and unspoken emotions that had been simmering for months. Sophie didn't pull away. Instead, she held me, solid and grounding, like an anchor in the storm of my life. Days turned into nights of whispered conversations, laughter, and stolen moments. Sophie became my escape, my emotional lifeline, the person who reminded me that I could feel deeply without being trampled on. But the secret hung over us like a storm cloud. One wrong word from Ethan or discovery by anyone in the house could shatter it all. Then, just when the fragile balance seemed bearable, Mia made another move. She called, her voice trembling but determined. Lila, can we meet? I really need to talk. I need your help. I hesitated, my chest tightening. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her face the consequences of her choices. Yet another part, the part that had loved her like a daughter for decades, felt the old pull of duty. I allowed myself to respond. Fine, one meeting, but nothing more. We agreed to meet at a small cafe we had visited years ago. She arrived, looking smaller somehow, weighed down by guilt and exhaustion. Our conversation started cautiously, but soon she began to unravel, not with apologies, but with raw, desperate honesty about the difficulties of her life, the strain with Andrew, and the mistakes she had made. I listened, silent, my heart a mixture of empathy, frustration, and lingering resentment. Her apology came at the end, soft, almost fragile. Lila, I'm sorry for everything. I know I hurt you. I never meant to replace you, but I did. I understand if you can't forgive me. I held my silence a long moment before speaking. Mia, it's not about a single day or a single mistake. It's about the years you chose to overlook what I gave you. Forgiveness isn't instant. Trust isn't instant. Some things, once broken, can't be restored overnight. Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded, knowing that our relationship had shifted irrevocably. She left the cafe first, and I watched her go, a mix of sorrow and relief washing over me. When I returned home, Sophie waited. I told her everything, every painful detail, the conversation, the conflict, the tug of war between duty and self-preservation. She held my hand, her touch steady. You did the right thing, she said. You are allowed to protect yourself. For the first time in years, I believed her. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt grounded. Sophie wasn't just a comfort. She was a mirror reflecting strength, resilience, and self-respect that I had almost forgotten I possessed. Yet, in the back of my mind, a storm brewed. Ethan's suspicion was growing. Mia's desperation hadn't fully subsided. And the secret between Sophie and me was a delicate thread that could snap at any moment, dragging us into chaos. The months that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Every day was a careful balance between maintaining the fragile normalcy at home and protecting the life Sophie and I were quietly building together. The secret was heavy, yet invigorating, an adrenaline-fueled tether between two people who finally felt seen after years of betrayal and neglect. Then, the inevitable happened. Ethan discovered my messages on the kitchen counter, the ones I had thoughtlessly left open. His expression was a mixture of shock, fury, and disbelief. Lila, what is this? His voice was low, tight, but dangerous. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It's Sophie. She's been helping me through things you've refused to understand. He laughed bitterly. Helping you? Is that what you call it? You've betrayed me. Us. Everything. I haven't betrayed you, I said firmly. I've protected myself. I've lived under guilt and expectation for too long, and yes, Sophie has been here for me when no one else was. I am allowed to feel alive again." He stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the walls. I could hear the pounding of his fists in the study, muttered curses, and the occasional quiet sob. He was struggling, and part of me felt guilty, but it was fleeting. I had spent decades sacrificing, bending myself into shapes that weren't mine. Not anymore. Then came the confrontation with Mia. She had reached out again, her voice desperate, almost pleading. "Lila, please, I need you. Andrew and we're lost. I don't know what to do." I listened to her words, the familiar ache tugging at my chest. But this time, I didn't jump. I let the pause stretch, letting her feel the weight of her choices. "Then you asked the person you chose," I replied softly, my voice carrying a steel edge. "I won't be the one to save you this time. You wanted Mark for the big moments. Let him handle the consequences now." Her sobs were quiet, muffled by the phone. I understand," she whispered, and hung up. For the first time, she faced the reality of her own decisions without my intervention. Sophie and I found solace in each other's company. Every stolen hour, every shared smile became a brick in the foundation of a life rebuilt. We laughed, cried, and dreamed again. Carefully, cautiously, but without the fear of being invisible or undervalued. Then came the storm that could no longer be avoided. Sarah confronted me one evening after dinner, her face pale, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I know about Sophie," she said, each word a sharp blade. "How could you? After everything, how could you destroy our family?" I met her gaze calmly. "Sarah, the family you wanted to preserve at all costs was never a fair one. I sacrificed, I gave, I protected, and I was ignored, dismissed, and replaced. I am not the villain here. I am finally living my truth." Her hand shook, tears streaking her face. "You were supposed to love me. You were supposed to be loyal to us." "I am loyal," I said firmly. "Loyal to the people who value me, loyal to myself, and I finally am." The confrontation ended with a storm of words, tears, and slammed doors. But when the echoes faded, something unexpected emerged, a profound sense of liberation. I had been acquitted, not by law, but by the undeniable truth of my own heart. Months later, Mia reached out one last time. Her words were tentative, quiet, respectful. "Lila, I know I hurt you. I know I've failed you, but you will always be my parent. I am sorry." I read the message, my heart a complicated mix of sorrow and relief. I didn't reply immediately. There was no rush. Some bridges, once broken, can't be rebuilt overnight, but forgiveness, real, heartfelt, and patient, was possible over time. Sophie stood beside me, holding my hand, grounding me. "You've earned this," she whispered. "You've finally chosen yourself." And I had. I had chosen myself, chosen love that was honest and reciprocal, chosen a life where I mattered. The house was quiet now, the tension slowly dissipating. Ethan was distant. Sarah had retreated into her world of blame, and Mia was finally learning to face reality. And for the first time in years, I was free to breathe, to live, and to embrace happiness on my own terms. The storm of betrayal, neglect, and heartache hadn't left scars. They had left lessons, resilience, and the courage to prioritize myself. Sophie was my anchor, my mirror, my proof that life could be tender, raw, and real again. And as I watched the sunset from my small apartment, hand in hand with Sophie, I realized this was my life, my choice, my redemption. And nothing could take that away from me.